thinking to myself, I'm like, how do you buy that thing and be serious about it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
All right. Adam, if industrial design was a highly flammable resin-infused composite, you would be 200 layers of highly compressed carbon fiber.
That might be the nicest thing you've ever said to me, Josh. Thank you. Welcome to Engineer versus
The
Designer.
podcast.
For engineers, designers, geeks, machine freaks, and those who make 5-axis machined titanium look sexy on my pasty white wrist. My name is Adam, industrial designer of cadjunkie.com.
And my name is Josh, mechanical engineer of SolidSmack.com. Each week's show comes in 3 pasty arm-slapping halves. This week we're talking badass design and badasser highly engineered precision machine man metal.
What?
It's true. I'll start with another what-if scenario to make your mind burst, courtesy of SolidSmack.com.
Followed by design process tips, tricks, and Q&A compliments of cadjunkie.com.
Whoa. And in the third half, we meet the man behind the metal.
Oh, yes.
Chief designer, Red Digital, and CEO of Rogue Design. The one, the only, the omnivorous Matt Tremblay.
Matt, a huge pleasure to have you on the show today. If you could machine a colossal slab of aged cheddar into a life-size superhero, which superhero would you choose?
No, you don't start off with easy questions, but actually, you know what? It is easy. It would be the two of you in some type of loving embrace.
Oh,
I mean, how amazing would that be? I mean, we get little snapshots of your head, but we want to see this in the 3D. Come on.
Okay, Matt, stay put.
Let's
We'll be
step it up,
hearing more
guys.
from you as the show goes on. Josh Mings of SolidSmack.com. Speaking of really bad ideas, remove the whey from the curds of knowledge. What have you got for us this week?
This week's SolidSmack What If is brought to you by Siemens PLM. Download a 45-day free trial of Solid Edge and find out how Synchronous Tech can help you design better at solidedge.com.
Now, before we get started, one little side note. I have to say that change is afoot here at EVD.
The winds of change are a-blowing.
You might have noticed that we are experimenting with different formats to replace the hallowed SolidSmack update.
Yep, we are. It's true.
Should I tell him why, Josh?
Yep, tell
Are
him.
you sure?
Go. Yep, tell him. Go,
Okay,
go, go.
because the SolidSmack update is now.
Its own show!
I was going to
Yes!
say that. The SolidSmack update is now its own show. We'll be dropping the latest and greatest from the world's most
Spastastic CAD blog people, yep.
complete with pretty pictures and mind-blowingly awesome cartoons.
Check it out over at SolidSmack.com.
Or search for SolidSmack on iTunes.
It's on iTunes. The Smoth Mailer agrees. Do it! He's forceful little guy, isn't he?
But we love it.
Okay. What if, Adam, what if you could design a toy that didn't scare children? Have you ever thought about that?
No.
Considered?
No.
Your toy designs are dang scary, buddy.
I really don't like this new segment.
I like it just fine.
What if your face didn't scare children?
Well, whatever. Matt, Adam likes to make a scene. He has shiny suits that he wears, pops out behind things, and likes to scare people in his shiny suits. What if he could machine an actual metal suit from a solid billet of aircraft-grade aluminum?
Seriously, Matt, the future of metal clothing.
Are you guys? Is this? Yeah. Okay. I'll take this as a serious question. I mean, yeah, you could totally do that. I mean, it's completely possible. You just need enough parts. I mean, if you're thinking of like machining big stovepipes and like walking around like the first Iron Man he built in that cave, then you know it's not going to be the most comfortable suit, and your dinner date is going to look across at you like you're kind of weird. But you know, if you machined little teeny pieces and bolted them together and stuff, and I mean, you work out some type of chainmail thing, that would work.
That's exactly what I'm thinking. I'm thinking like
Adam
your
and chainmail.
bracelet's like $35,000 or something. We're going to talk about that later. Your watch, but I mean, if you could make that an entire suit, I mean, it might cost $4.7 million or whatever, but man, would it be awesome?
It would be. You know what? We should get in on that. Let's do that. I'll do it. No, I mean it's that's the whole idea. You know, I mean, do what no one else will and have fun with it. And if you have an idea, let that idea exist. Because you know what? It should.
So is that the next clothing innovation? I mean, completely machined.
Seriously, though, seriously. I mean, we're seeing more and more in the highly custom products. Granted, it's expensive still to do very customized products, but more and more hard goods are going to be 3D printed, CNC machined. these kind of hybrid mass custom objects. And what is the future of that, particularly in, say, something that's traditionally just mass-produced, fashion or whatever?
I'd say. I mean, as far as 3D printing goes, I mean, I look at 3D printing and I never see that really as a true venue for product sales. I mean, maybe some of the DMLS and laser sintering stuff, but the quality of those things, and I mean, it's still gritty, and it doesn't really have a really finished feel to it. As far as kind of mass producing with hard goods and things like that, I mean, machining is at least what I try and do with machining is I try and turn machining into an art form, because it's so amazing when it's done well, and attention to detail is paramount, and you control every single tool path on a piece. You come out with something truly amazing where the designs and the forms all come together as one, and you get this little diamond-like piece. And that is what's really expensive. You can't do that. I mean, you can. There's places like Protomold is a great example. I mean, those guys are great. You send off a file to those guys, they machine it, and you can get it back in a couple days. But there's still a lot of limitations there. They use big bits, they use high cutting rates, and so the real detail in the pieces sometimes gets lost. And it kind of all depends on what you're going for. If the details aren't what you're worried about, you just want a functional piece, then all the power to it. Go for it. It'll work. It's a great way to get a bunch of pieces fast and for cheap. But if you're like me and you look at things and I have a problem. It literally is a problem. I look at things and I pick them apart. I mean, it's like, I get a water bottle and I'm like, why did they put this here? What are they doing with the label? Why? I mean, and I can't do anything, and so with my pieces, I don't sacrifice a thing. I mean, I look at them, I design them, I try and do them out of the best material possible in the coolest way possible, using the highest technology, like the most insanely expensive whatever it is. And because, why? Because there has to be someone that does that. I mean, everyone else, there's so much worry about cost in the industry, and that there's for very good reason, but I just feel like there needs to be something out there that people can look at. Well, it's like the Bugatti Veyron. You look at that thing. And it's your and like, you think that they're making any money off that car? No, they're not making any money. They make that car because it's a white horse that can ride out front of the entire car industry, and people can look at it and be like, damn. So I don't know.
So let me throw something out there for you, Matt. I mean, I think you're heading somewhere really interesting. There's a whole big argument going on right now with people talking about the digital age of design as somehow, people are pining for the old days of what they call, quote, craftsmanship. And what I think you're talking about is digital craftsmanship in a way, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And there's part of me that misses that too, because I was traditionally trained. I had a degree in studio art. So I painted and cut wood and did that. And then I'm classically trained as an industrial designer at Art Center. And that was all hand stuff, hand drawing, this and that. And nowadays, I'm all whiteboard, I just whack it all out on a whiteboard, and then I go straight to the computer and I'm designing in the computer. And I'm like a SolidWorks professor's worst nightmare. And I ran into this because they look at me and I've got this cool thing on the screen, it's all exactly like what it should look like, but you look at the side and the whole damn side is red, and because I'll just model right over something, cut through it, model over it, and not look back. And what that does is that gives you speed. And a lot of engineers have a real hard time with that. But yeah, kind of back here, I forget, what was your original question?
Digital craftsmanship was the prompt. Is craftsmanship dead in the digital age, or is there a new kind of craftsmanship?
No way. Craftsmanship, people, for like, you first kind of think about that and you think of some guy at a desk with like a drafting tool or a pencil making like a line that starts fat and then fades into thin, and then, or somebody's sanding a piece of wood. But that same craftsmanship can come inside of a machine. And basically all we're doing is we're just getting new tools, new paintbrushes per se, you know.
Yep.
And that's what a computer is. That's what Photoshop is. It's just a tool. And you can do different things with that tool, and you can basically be as intricate or as abstract as you want. So in my pieces, with like the rogue pieces and a lot of the red stuff, I mean, I try to make it so no matter how far you zoom in on the product, there's always beauty. And there's a first read, a second read, a third read, a fourth read. And no matter where you tip the product, no matter how you look at it, from how far away, you're like, that thing is badass.
You know what? That reminds me a lot of Josh, actually, because it's like no matter how close you zoom in or how far you zoom back, he's so freaking ugly that it's, you know, it's kind of the antithesis of what you're talking about, really.
Yes. Thank you, Adam. Thank you very much.
All right, gentlemen, let's move on.
All right, Adam O'Hearn of cadjunkie.com. While Adam, while you're sticking your elbow in your mouth there, while it's considered a talent in some countries, I believe you have some scintillating Q&A for us. What's on your mind, buddy?
This week's CAD Q&A is brought to you by Siemens PLM. Download a 45-day free trial of Solid Edge for accelerated design, faster revisions, and better reuse of imported 2D and 3D data over at solidedge.com.
Today we're chatting with Matt Tremblay, industrial designer of Nike, Oakley, and now Red Camera, and the founder of Rogue Design.
Matt, in the third half of the show, we're going to talk about your background, your inspiration, and all that great stuff. But first, I wanted to hear a little bit about your design process. So let's say you're designing the next generation Rogue DZN titanium watch. Where does the process start for you? You mentioned the whiteboard. Is that pretty much it?
No, you know, I mean, sort of, kind of, sometimes. I mean, it's different every single time. You know, I mean, inspiration comes in all ways and forms. You know, I mean, you can be reading a book and read some certain passage and think about something, or you're just driving in a car and you see some sign or something and it just kind of pops to you. So inspiration can come from anywhere, and that's usually where it comes. I'll just be sitting there doing something completely random, and I'm like, oh, and I'll be like, yeah, I need to do that. Yeah, that's a good idea. And then what I'll do is I'll kind of go to the whiteboard, and if it's like a mechanical device, I'll kind of just sketch out the basic mechanics of it and just say, okay, that actually works. That's like the engineering of that is sound, and if I make it, it'll open or flip or hinge or whatever. And then pretty much from there, I go right into the computer and just start whacking away at using SolidWorks. And I move pretty fast in SolidWorks, so I can move through generations of designs very quickly. And that's where my process happens. It happens in the computer.
So do you do any hand sketching at all, other than what's on your whiteboard?
Yeah. I do. I mean, it's a tertiary, and this probably it kind of flies in the face of everything I was ever taught at Art Center and anywhere else. And my teachers are probably really mad about this interview even happening. But you know, it's the way that works for me, and that process is the reason it's the reason that I am where I am today, because I work for Jim Gennard, as you know, which is amazing, visionary god of like all design things, and Jared Land, and which is a visionary, amazing, is president of Red, and they're both tinkerers, they're both designers in their own right, and they want things and they want them fast, you know. And so I started off at Oakley, kind of, you know, sketching and doing it normally, but Jim would come up and ask for something, and I'd be like, he wants to hold this thing. That's what he really wanted to do, is hold it and touch it and rub it with his fingers and be like, this watch is this, or this sunglasses feels like that. Just doesn't feel right, because that's kind of the way he works. But so what I did is I came in as a designer at Oakley sketching, but then I had my laptop with SolidWorks on it, which I could model on. So I just started modeling in SolidWorks and sending it off to the 3D printer, and then the next day giving Jim something he could hold. And he loved that. He had never seen anything like that before, because the process had always been, okay, let's do sketches. It'll go to the alias monitor, not monitor, the alias
modeler.
Say it for me. Say it for me. Nice. The alias modeler. And so basically they would be back and forth, and it would take maybe a week or two, or maybe in best case, like a couple days to get something. But with me, I was skipping that entire step and basically getting him a model in a day.
Mm-hmm.
So
Wow.
it was getting him something he could touch and feel right away. So he loved that. And that really made a huge difference. So that process speeds things up incredibly.
Well,
and
one
so
of the things that I think is interesting about what you're talking about here as a part of the design process is something that I do, when we're working, as EVD Media, when we do work for clients, we try to include the client in the process, which is something that a lot of design firms really avoid. They don't want for the client to see your dirty underwear. They don't want to see the messy model you put together really fast. They want you only to see the glitzy final product. And what you're talking about is throwing something together real quick just so they see the process they have, and they're kind of invested in the process in a way, instead of just, looking at the final product.
Absolutely. I mean, and as a designer, that's really how you have to think. There's this kind of syndrome that kind of lurks in the design field. That's this kind of cockiness that designers tend to get, which is, here is my gold egg that I've designed, and there it is for the world. Take it, leave it, or do nothing, and that's when you're working for a client, you can't really do that, and it can kind of bite them in the butt. But when you're working for a client, it's like you really need to, it's their product. You're working for them. So what they say goes, if they want it to be a square, then it's a square. And you can try and help them, kind of push it into a new direction. You're like, design's moving into this. What if we brushed the steel? What if we perfed it? Like, what if we perfed steel and then rubberized it? And you can push them in those directions, but overall there needs to be a very good dialogue between the client and the designer.
Well, I can't think of a clever way of ending that except to say, we'll be right back.
And welcome back. As you know, we're chatting with Matt Tremblay, industrial designer and all-around badass. He creates things that make you clench your teeth so tight they shatter twice.
Yes, twice. It's true. I'm gumming on the microphone right now. We asked Matt to come on the show because, well, frankly, we're a little jealous, and we wanted to absorb all of the meaty layers of his design and entrepreneurial knowledge.
All right, Matt, you're 7 years out of design. You've worked at Nike, Oakley, now chief designer at Red Digital, founder CEO of Rogue Design. Dang it. Man, okay. First, what interested you in design? What got you into it?
I don't know, tree forts maybe? It's making
It's a good
things.
start. A lot of people got their start in tree forts.
That's the thing, and it just depends on how far you take that tree fort, But it's just making things in general, my entire family is on my father's side and they're all engineers. My father was an engineer and my grandfather was an engineer, and my mother's side is all artists. So it's this kind of weird combination of things. And my dad would always do projects for me, like whatever it was, we would build it, and we'd sit there in the garage and we'd build it together. If he's changing the tire, I'm sitting there learning how to change a tire. If we're building a tree fort, I'm learning how to hammer the nails. And then it would upgrade to like a go-kart or something, and would build the go-kart from scratch. We wouldn't buy it. We'd buy the frame and the wheels and the chain and the motor off of whatever and put it all together. And I just watched that, and he was a huge influence in my life, and and he eventually went into the financial world, as did a lot of the other people in my family, but their backgrounds were all engineers. So we all kind of know how to instinctually put things together. And I went into the University of Vermont, which is the first college I went to, and I went in as a psych major and immediately realized that I didn't want to do that, and I couldn't. Dropped out immediately, went into art, into full-blown studio art major, did that, started making these wacky sculptures out of who knows what. They did not know how to handle me, so they just called it what did they call it? They called it independent studies. That's
right.
what it was. and that's just like, just give them wood and some tools and just let them be.
Let them be in the corner.
In the basement of the art building. And so I would come out with these things, with these spring-loaded blades that if you touched it, the blade would like snap up. But I'm just kind of like making these on the bandsaw and things like that. And I eventually went out to like ILM and looked around, had like some tour there for some reason. And the guy's like, oh, you got to go to Art Center. And he's looking at my little portfolio that I made, and it's garbage. So I end up going to the Art Center and kind of like showing my portfolio, and they're like, yeah, it's garbage. Like, we can't accept you, no way. And this is like halfway. I was trying to transfer out of UVM, and then I end up applying to RISD, and they reject me because I was really into the golden mean, and I've been studying it for like probably the past 10 years, but I got really into it, and I turned all of their little drawing tests in the beginning. I totally took them in a completely weird direction, and like they told me to draw a bicycle, and I drew some crazy motorcycle with like an enclosed canopy and everything, and apparently they don't like that. So
I mean, how did your time at I love that you included, by the way, being rejected from these schools, and I want to find out how you got back in, because obviously you did go to Art Center, right? Yeah.
Okay, so this is what happened, right? So I ended up graduating from UVM, started looking for jobs, but they were all in print, and I really didn't like print. I liked building things. So when I went out to Art Center and they rejected me, I was like, screw that. I'm not going to let them reject me. So I took my car, loaded it up, went out to Pasadena, got a little craft apartment, this little studio, and started taking Art Center at night courses to stack my portfolio so it would be exactly what they wanted it to be. And so I did that. And lo and behold, I applied, and they're like, oh, this is the exact portfolio we like to see in an entrance student, and I was like, I'm like, cool, that's exactly what I need to happen. So halfway through Art Center, I ended up getting this internship at Nike. Went up there. It was amazing, up in Beaverton for a summer, and started out designing running shoes, but ended up designing motorcycle boots because I just bought a motorcycle, and I was all into that at the time.
At Nike, it wasn't because of
they didn't like that.
Your design chops, but something about poison dart frogs? They liked.
The poison. Well, I mean, I've always been into animals. I'm definitely an animal lover, but I tend to like kind of odder animals, and I like the animals, but I always really like creating the habitat. So I got really into just designing habitats for these animals, and I had designed this poison dart frog habitat that was a fully functioning ecosystem that had full transpiration that would happen in the tank, and it had a watershed that would filter the water, and the water would run back up and then mist up out of the top, and there was like live growing moss. I mean, it was the type of thing where I wanted to live in there. It was so amazing. But anyway, that was weird, and that was on my resume, and they looked at it and they're like, that's kind of weird. That's kind of the type of thing we want at Nike. So that was one of the things. That was one of the things that
note to people trying to get into Nike.
You've already got your college professors mad at you for talking about not sketching, and now you've got Nike mad at you for talking about how weird their design decisions are.
Exactly. I mean, all's good in the hood. I mean, it's like all those guys are amazing. They're all amazing, and I'm thankful to all of them because they made me who I was, and every step of the way you learn something. I mean, I sent you guys that little chain of life events that I designed last night, and it was like on every step I put the word learning. And that's really the key to the whole thing is no matter what you're doing, no matter where you are, just try and learn as much as you can from the situation. So anyway, I get back from Oakley and with a bunch of shoes and stuff like that. And then I about a year later, a friend comes up to me and says, oh man, I was really excited. I was going to go on this study abroad program to France. And I just dropped out, and there's like a week, and I'm like, really? I'm like, that sounds kind of fun. I might want to do that. And so with a week to go, I submit an application. They accept me into this little program. And a week later, I'm on a plane to France going to Barbizon in south of France to go to this college, INSEAD, which is a business school over there.
Wow.
And about 6 of us went over there on a pilot program as a kind of an experiment in design management where designers and business people work together in order to understand how to develop products better. So when they come into the field, they're actually ready to be like, okay, this is what a designer is going to be like. And the designer's like, okay, this is what a businessman is going to be like.
We actually joke a lot about how engineers and designers speak different languages, but in this case, you actually do apparently speak different languages, or unless you speak French. Do you speak French?
I try to. It's my last name, Tremblay.
Oh, okay.
We in the U.S. we pronounce it Tremblay, but it's French. But I can't speak French. Don't try and speak French to me. But yeah, so that was amazing, because you're in a different culture. You have people from all over the world coming to this place. And you have to work with people that have no idea about design, and you have to come up with products. So that was very interesting. That was a couple months. And the kind of moral to that story is it kind of moves us forward, which I'm trying to do, but very slowly. I ended up on this balcony just kind of hanging out with this professor, Marty Smith, the head of the product design department at the time at Art Center. And we were just kind of talking. He's like, Matt, what do you want to do after this? And I'm like, oh, man, I don't know. I mean, design something, And he's like, what do you think? Would you work for Oakley? And I'm like, hell yeah, I would work for Oakley. And he was like, all right, well, let me see if I can make a call on a guy I know over there, Hans Moritz, which is, by the way, like my hero of design. Like, if you guys don't know who this guy is, Hans Moritz is, he's probably, in my eyes, one of the best designers I've ever met in my life. And it's like everything he does, everything he sees is design. It's beautiful. Hans, shout out, you're the man. Anyway, so I go have my interview with Hans. I bring all my stuff. I have like 7 books of portfolios. The guy like flips through them like he's looking through a magazine, like barely looking at the pictures. I'm trying to explain him like the different projects. He's like, oh, yeah. On to the next book. And I had designed this set of calipers, this golden mean calipers. And these golden mean calipers, they measure proportions in the human body. So you can take these things up to your arm, and they line up exactly with nodal points on the skeleton. And they work on every single human being on the planet. And they work on dogs, and they work on trees and everything. So on all the interviews I ever went on, I would break a branch off of the tree out front of the building, and I would bring it in with me.
Oh, wow.
And then I would line up these calipers, and they'd be like, oh, you golden mean this and that, do you believe in it? And I'm like, believe in it? I'm going to prove it to you. And so I would put these calipers up to it and show, and it's nutty, man. They line, the tips of the calipers are designed in a way so when you open and close them, they line up exactly to the nodal points on the branches of pretty much any plant in the known like environment of the world. So that was interesting. So eventually I got the design at Oakley, and that's how I ended up at Oakley.
Nice. So jumping ahead, of course, Jim Gennard was there at Oakley, and then he asked you if you wanted to work for Red, right? So and Red, they're amazing cameras. First of all, I want to get into a little bit of the history of that, but there's 3 cameras right now. The Red one, the Epic, the Scarlet, and you work that whole gamut of design. I mean, you guys do modeling, prototyping, you do the camera accessories. First, give us a little history on the Red transition and what you do there.
Okay, so I started out at Oakley, and like I said, I was doing just the sketches and things like that, and then I think I had maybe done one. I was doing a couple watches, and I was doing them in 3D. And I had one rendering that, like, one day I walked in, and I kind of, like, all the designers pin up their renderings, because you make your little cube, and it looks nice. You're like, oh, this is all my stuff. So I pinned up this, like, my favorite watch rendering on the wall, and randomly, Jim walks by, sees this rendering that I'd put up 10 minutes before, and he's like, oh, that's cool, look at that rendering, that's what I'm talking about, this and that, blah, 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 And I was like, oh God, like I don't even know how to deal with this. Like all of a sudden, the president Colin Baden's over at my desk, and Jim is there, and they're all like people are crowding around, and I'm like, oh God, just like I didn't know what to do, And so anyway, Jim was there for he was there for an initial meeting, kind of to talk with one of the other designers at Oakley about this camera that he wanted to design, and he said, Matt, why don't you come in this room with us? And so I was like, oh God, and so he started drawing on the board these shapes, and then I've never really been shy, so I just grabbed the pen and started drawing shapes. And what if we did this? And what if we did this? And what if it had this shape? And he was like, okay, go for it. Like I'll give you a shot. Like go ahead and try and like make one. So I designed one in 3D, and the next day he came in and I had it in my hand, and he's like, where the hell did you get this? And I was like, I made it. And so he's like, what do you mean you made it? And I was like, I made it and then printed it out on the thing. And he's like, and it was kind of bugging. He was like, this is really cool. So the next thing he does is he comes over to my desk, and Jim is a big funny car guy. He had like Oakley had a funny car team, and like the big drag racers, and they have these blowers that come out of the thumb, and they're just the coolest mechanically sculptural looking thing. He takes this thing, it's about 100 pounds, and he slams it on my desk. He's like, make the camera look like this. And I'm like, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen. I'll do it. And so anyway, it kind of went back and forth like this for a little while, and eventually Jim Jim kind of stepped down as the CEO of Oakley, and there was this slow transition into Jim selling the company and everything. And eventually, I was just working on a lot of red stuff for Jim, and a lot of Oakley stuff at the same time. And Jim calls me up and he says, Matt, like, I've got great news. And I'm like, what's the news? And he's like, you can come work for Red. And I'm like, sweet, done. Let's do this. So we had a little machined model at this point, no guts, really nothing, and it came over, and it was in Jim's warehouse, and it was about 5 of us. It was Jim and I think Ted Shilowitz and Kelly Fairbanks and Jared Land and David Valaket came really soon as a machinist. This guy's like the best pro machinist you've ever seen. And so it was amazing. It was like a little startup company. We're sitting there throwing stuff. We're shooting gun blanks off in the warehouse, and it was just one of those like amazing times.
The choice of a startup.
It's just amazing, and so eventually all of a sudden you kind of turn your shoulder and there's 15 people behind you, and you're like, wait, who was that guy sitting over there? And then I asked Jared, I'm like, who's that guy over there? And he's like, I don't know. And then we move upstairs, and it was Jared, Jim, myself, Rob Lohman, and Dean De Silva at the time. And so we're all within 10 feet of each other. And Jim is, like, I really can't say enough about Jim. I mean, this guy is one of the most creative, like, visionary, like, type of people that you've ever seen. He's always on, always designing, always creating something in his head. We need to do this. Once you do it, it needs to be better. And once it's better, how do we make it better? How do we do the next step? How do we be revolutionary? It's never just how do we make the next thing. It's always how do we revolutionize the industry, in whatever industry that is. And you watched him do it in eyewear. I mean, Oakley set the tone for that. But anyway, we're up there, and it's the three or 4 or 5 of us up in this room, and you have this amazing dynamic that happens when one person says something, then Jared will say something, then I'll say something, then Jim will say something, and it just goes around, and we've got whiteboards, and I'm on the computer modeling as they're talking, and it's probably one of the most high-stress environments ever, because you have Jim standing over your shoulder watching you model, and Jared saying, we got to model this one next, and you learn to model really damn fast, and it's being thrown into a pressure cooker but it's amazing. It's just pure discovery and pure just design and invention,
It started with that single camera, the Red One, and that was the basis for everything. You guys did the accessories, everything for that. What was the timeline for that? Like how quick did you produce it, and what went into that?
Oh man, I mean, it's when I look back on it, I mean, it's such a blur. I mean, I can't really put dates to it, but I mean, it's what went into it. It's just pure blood, sweat, tears, and putting the axe to the grindstone. I mean, you just have to dedicate your life to it, and that's what you do. You eat, breathe, and sleep it, and you wake up in the night, and I'm sitting there. I would have these dreams, and I still have them, where I'm sitting there, and in my dream for 3 hours, I'm modeling on my computer, and it's just like, oh man, you got it.
Been there too, yeah.
I have had those dreams as well. I have to admit, you were being overworked when you start dreaming in CAD. But anyway, what's impressive though is that you're eat, sleep, breathing red, and then somehow also now you've started this Rogue DZN thing. Tell us a little bit about that and how you've, in the context of being so busy with your other work, how has this come about?
It's a juggling act, and you know what it's like. I mean, my friend Stuart Hubbard said it best. I mean, it's like juggling fireballs. I mean, you're literally juggling fireballs, and if you stop for a second, the thing's going to hit you in the face, and you're going to have a giant scar and burned flames everywhere. And it's basically the way Rogue came about. Kind of the why to that question was, I've been designing at Red for so long, and now we've got over 500 people at the company, which consists of engineers and this and that, and I'm still the only designer there. I mean, it
Wow.
says my title's chief designer, but I'm the only designer. So it's kind of like, of course you're going to be the chief designer, So and that's not saying that Jim and Jared aren't designers. Those guys are designing all the time too. So, but like I'm the only one kind of out of design school, like that's there for that specific purpose. But so there's packages, there's restrictions, there's things, and it's always camera related and things like that. So I was like, kind of in my head, I've been creating this design language and that's been inspired a lot by Oakley and Jim and Jared and the people at Nike and people at Art Center, and so I built this design language over time. I'm like, how can I express that in the most raw and simple form, and also inject in the ideals that piss me off so much with the design industry, which is the lack of authentic materials, the lack of attention to detail. Like when you go into a brand new, you walk into some brand new $100,000 car or something, some speedster. You open the thing, you open the door, and you close the handle, and your wedding ring or whatever, hits the handle, and it's plastic. And you're like, you got to be kidding me. You're like, I paid $100,000 for this car, and it's got a plastic door handle that's supposed to look like it's aluminum. And then you see carbon fiber, and you look at it closely, and you see that it's a print. And you're like, oh my, and those are the things that kill me. So when I decided to create Rogue, I was like, none of that's going to happen. Every single piece of the process that I do, from the design to the engineering to the material treatment, to the materials I choose, to the packaging, to the way I treat my clients, everything is going to be an 11. I mean, and there's just, in anything you look at it, like I always just say, there can never be a hole. If there's a hole that in there, I'm sticking my finger in it before you even open your mouth. And it's just, everything has to come together in this one unified body, and you end up with a $36,000 bracelet when you do all that. So there's a reason why people don't.
As it turns out. Well, when you make a bracelet out of G5 aerospace grade titanium, apparently 200 layers of compressed carbon fiber and 9-axis milling, that is not
those are two different.
surprising.
You got two different bracelets there. You got two different.
Okay.
So you have your 5-axis machine titanium, the aerospace grade G5 titanium. That's 9-axis machined, and that's metal. The 200 layers of carbon fiber composite is a separate bracelet. That's the Armadillo C6 Dark Horse. So that's and then the 161. That's the one out of titanium. Then there's the Dark Horse, which is made out of carbon fiber.
Yeah, they're definitely not quick turn off the shelf pieces either, and they're not cheap. You mentioned it's 35,000 that's for the
titanium version,
for the titanium one. What process goes into making just one of these bracelets? I mean, it's got to take
It's ridiculous. It's
absolutely
ridiculous. It's it's crazy. I mean, you have to get the pieces of metal. You have to acquire them first, and you have to order them from different parts of the world. And certain parts of the world have crappier titanium, and some people sell it as military spec G5 when it's not, and it'll have little inclusions of like G3 titanium or something, and it just won't be. And so you have to be really sure that you get the right materials. The right materials are more expensive. You have to know that you have machinists that are capable of doing the things that I give them. And I give them pieces that are impossible to cast. So, I mean, machining them is just a nightmare. And they've come up with ways it's amazing what these guys are doing. They're coming up with ways of machining that I've never seen before.
Yeah,
and it's
so smooth. It's just I can't understand how they're getting there.
Yeah, you go on the site and you look at some of the zooms, and it's like I control every one of those tool paths.
And that stuff's not renderings. Those are actual photos.
Oh, on the website.
Yeah. On the website,
all the photo gallery stuff on the website are photos.
Wow.
All photos. The only 3D rendered stuff are the 360 views.
Wow. What advice would you have for somebody who wants to go out on their own and design a product and manufacture it themselves?
Make sure you have a day job. I mean, that's what's allowed me to do it. Besides that, in all seriousness, you need the drive. You have to make sure that you have that drive that says when every person, because when I started this company, every person is like, you're a lunatic. No one is going to pay $35,000 for a bracelet. You're a lunatic. And okay, I said, all right, but I'm going to do it anyway just because I want to see this thing. I want one. And that's basically where it starts, right? Like, I wanted one, so the only way I could have one is to make it and then sell it to other people. So, the advice is you just have to make sure that you're passionate to the nth degree about it. If you're not passionate and you're just like, let's make a new hat for a dog, it'll sell like crazy at Petco, and it's you start a company like that, 2 years down the line, you're going to be like, I can't believe I spent my life like making hats for dogs at Petco, and so make sure that you're passionate about it,
Be careful, man.
Yeah.
You're talking about something. Yeah, I think that about EVD every single day.
But here's the thing, if you're passionate about dog hats and you love them, then all the power to you. And all you talk to your friends about, I just created the most amazing dog hat. You have no idea. And,
I hear that
go
from
for
Josh
it.
every single day.
There you go, Adam. No, that's all you, buddy.
Yeah, go with your passion and lead with your heart, and then follow 3 rules. I have 3 rules that I follow, and one of them is always show up on time. Right. One of them is always deliver more than you promise, and the other is always give 110%. And if you follow those 3 rules, pretty much in any aspect of your life, you're going to win.
Awesome advice, Matt. Having you on the show has been even more fun than that time attached tiny video cameras to his body with Velcro and ran through a wall of poison dart frogs, as a matter of fact. Thanks so much.
Oh, that was a good time. Anyway, guys, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I'm truly humbled that you guys even consider me for the show. So I thank you, and I love what you guys are doing. Solid Smack and Adam, your website too. Beautiful.
Thanks so much. And if anybody else out there would like to send tiny poisonous amphibians to EVD HQ, please poke holes in the box and address them to Adam.
Yep, and if you'd like to send 500 feet of Velcro to wrap his body in, please address that to Adam as well. Engineer versus designer, appreciate your comments. If this show makes love bubbles pop out your nose, Head over to Engineer versus Designer and wipe it in the comments.
And if you'd like to
please.
see us throw pancakes at the computer screen, please be sure to like us, plus want us, follow us, or whatever, as social media has been correlated with buttery syrup and breakfast food violence.
What? This show is edited by Simon Martin. Our theme music is by Russ Hartman.
We'll see you next week, and remember, without designers, we would be carting video cameras around on horse carts.
Yep, and without engineers, designers would still be trying to squeeze film out of their buttocks.
What the heck?
Action.
A production of EBD Media.